Salofalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susanna Suisuki. Coming up, an academic who helped abuse survivors in state care. Also,
I would just tell them that it's never too much for you and you should absolutely go for your dreams.
One small step for a woman, one giant leap for Fiji. And later,
always a privilege and a joy to play in front of your own fans and your family.
will we see a Pacific team in the FIFA World Cup in 2026? An academic who helped expose abuse in state care says racism is still a huge problem, and more work is needed to change systems that failed thousands of Māori and Pacific children in state and faith-based care in Aotearoa. Dr. Oliver Sutherland was instrumental in advocating for scores of children from 1970 to 1986, helping to investigate and publicise horrific abuse and torture by the state. His meticulous record-keeping led to evidence being used by the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse in Care, which eventuated in 138 recommendations to government. Alicia Foon spoke with activists, advocates and academic Dr. Oliver Sutherland about how his legacy in standing up for Māori and Pacific survivors of abuse helped lead to an inquiry and New Zealand government's formal apology.
It has been a long time coming, 50 years in my history of involvement. I thought that the words that were spoken were sincere. I don't think anybody could say that they weren't. But what I think was needed and what I would have thought the government might have been able to do was to give some sort of timeline with a few action points along the way so that the survivors would see that there was a roadmap of some sort towards a goal of fair and equitable redress along the lines that the Royal Commission suggested in their report that they presented in December 2021. That was missing, and I would have thought that the government had time. In fact, I'm sure the government has had time to have put that together. That was a failure on the government's part. It always came back to the children and what was happening to the children, and we did our best to expose what was happening to children using often individual cases, particularly like the case of the 13-year-old Niuean boy who's now Hakihalo, the Niuean man. But in 1976, we exposed publicly the story of what happened to him at Lake Alice. And that was the first time that the horrors of Lake Alice were revealed. In so many ways, that exemplified everything that was wrong with the education and all the systems that he came into contact with. From the minute he arrived as a 6-year-old speaking only Niuean and then put straight into a primary school that didn't acknowledge that he couldn't speak English, and it all went downhill from there. And they tried to, and he arrived with his grandmother. Well, she couldn't speak English either. Systems that they were confronted with took absolutely no account of that at all. And in the end, the punishment that he got for that was to be sent to Lake Alice and to be given shock treatment. That was the system's only way of dealing with the fact that he was different and he was culturally different and he was linguistically different. But he was not stupid and he was not bad, and yet that was how he was treated. In Haki's case, it was the failures of the education system, failures of the social welfare system, failures of the judicial system, and ultimately failure of the health system, which allowed him to be given shock treatment as punishment as a 13-year-old. It was horrendous, and perhaps that was one case which exemplified all that was worst of the monocultural systems in those years.
And you fought hard for change and to highlight racist systems within New Zealand. Do you think much has changed since then, and what more needs to be done to make sure this never happens again?
Well, I think there have been changes. I mean, certain of the practices that were commonplace in the early 70s were outlawed by later legislation. You only need to look at the situation today to see that, in fact, by way of attitudes and even by way of some of the policies and practices, not a lot has changed. There have been some fine words said, but the situation in the Department of Social Welfare, Orang Tamariki, they haven't changed materially. They've changed some in some superficial respects, but they haven't changed materially from some of the earlier racist practices and policies that existed back in the 1970s. So there's work to be done. I mean, we always said that the whole social welfare system and the judicial system, particularly as it related to children, should be demolished, got rid of, and a new system built through collaboration and the input from Māori and Pacific families and designing a system that took account of cultural differences and could be truly called a multicultural system rather than a monocultural system.
Do you believe racism is still a Pākehā problem?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. There have been major changes since the 1970s. That's true. Te reo is used very much more widely. Māori much more commonly found in places of middle, if not senior positions in various institutions and can exert their influence. The Māori parliamentarians are more powerful and are more vocal than ever was the case back in the 70s. There have been major changes. The police force is headed by a Māori woman at the moment. I mean, that was unthinkable back in the 1970s when there were no Māoris in the police force above the level of inspector. Back in the 70s, there was only one Māori magistrate in the country. Now, of course, there are Māori judges. So those changes have happened, and they're real. And I don't want to say that they're trivial. They're not. But at the same time, some of the underlying policies and practices still remain and still need to be changed to ensure that Māori and Pacific children receive the justice and the cultural approach that they need and deserve.
The Pew Charitable Trust International Fisheries Group has two key goals going into next week's annual meeting of the Western and Central Pacific Fisheries Commission in Suva. Pew's Glenn Holmes hopes the Commission will finally implement its plans for managing transshipment on vessels after working on such a scheme for years. He told Don Wiseman they also want electronic monitoring put in place. Mr. Holmes says the Commission has also been working on this for a number of years, but now trails the efforts made by fisheries management agencies in other parts of the world.
You're right, it has. I think that WCPFC was the first tuna commission to actually start down this road 10 years ago, and it's one of the last ones to make some progress. To be fair, it did this in conjunction with electronic reporting, and it did get electronic reporting up a while ago. So I think it tended to focus initially on the reporting side.
That's technology carried by every boat, is it?
The reporting is the way the data is sent in to the Commission and to the flag states, rather than using paper logbooks and pieces of paper sent or faxes or things like that. It's much more modern and efficient to report electronically.
Is it reliable?
The reporting aspect is more about efficiency, and there's less chances for error, for transcription errors. But it's important to distinguish between electronic reporting and electronic monitoring. The discussion this year is all about monitoring.
What will it involve?
So the Commission has now for a number of years been working out a way to incorporate things like cameras on vessels to be able to monitor the catches that are coming in, the bycatch, when fishing operations are happening, all that sort of stuff. Essentially, a lot of the work that a human observer might currently do. And so in order to be able to do that, and to do that with confidence in the information that those systems generate, you need a bunch of standards. You need to agree on the minimum standards. So things like where cameras will be, what the cameras can actually monitor, and the resolutions that the cameras are operating at, and that sort of stuff. And it's like a bit of a Pandora's box. It sounds very simple at first pass, and then you start getting into the details and you realize that there's a lot more things that need to be considered.
As we say, it's been going on for a long time that they've been looking at this electronic monitoring and accepting that there are some complexities associated with it.
Yes.
Why is it taking so long? Are they dragging the chain?
It's a good question. Realistically, I do think there is some element of chain dragging involved, and I think the complexities of the issue is used as an excuse to do that. That's me calling a spade a spade. The other tuna commissions have managed to agree and move forward on this in a much more timely manner than WCPFC has managed to do. And so I think there is a bit of chain dragging. That's for WCPFC in particular, there is so much of the fishery within exclusive economic zones and not so much on the high seas compared to the other RFMOs. And that means that there is more at stake if one member insists on a certain protocol and another member doesn't, that they risk losing business because of that, or if the protocol costs more or something like that. So that may be the underlying factor as to why the chain has been dragged slightly more here than elsewhere. One factor. There could be other factors at play. But we're now at a stage where there is really no longer any reason for that chain to be dragged, and everything is now in place. We have a very efficient chair of the working group in charge of that. And so I have every confidence that standards will be agreed this year to allow electronic monitoring to take place in the Western Central Pacific. I think the standards will be agreed this year. Yes.
Let's look at transshipment, and this has been debated for a long time as well. What are the specific issues with transshipping?
Transshipping is a major issue because it happens on the high seas. So we're only talking about transshipment on the high seas. We're not talking about transshipment that happens in port, which is another element of transshipping. And anything that happens on the high seas has less scrutiny involved in it. There is less oversight. And so that opens the doors for nefarious activities to possibly slip through the compliance cracks.
What sort of nefarious activities, Glenn?
It could be the laundering of illegal catch coming through. It could be smuggling of illicit materials, although that's a bit outside of the remit of the Commission. But the main concern for fisheries management is unreported catch or illegal catch making its way into the supply chain.
All right. So an organisation like you
Yes.
want to see this transshipment, if it happens, done within harbours?
No, not necessarily. What we want is better management of transshipment. There are some completely legitimate reasons why transshipment should be able to happen on the high seas. Every other tuna RFMO, as well as the FAO, have higher standards of transshipment management. And the WCPFC is the last of the tuna RFMOs to lift its transshipping standard up to the guidelines established by the FAO a number of years ago now. It's 15 years since the transshipping measure in WCPFC has been amended, and it's high time that the standards were lifted up so that there was better monitoring of transshipment activities to allow better management of the fishery as a whole.
A Fijian woman has made history by becoming the nation's analog astronaut. 26-year-old Niharika Gambia is undergoing astronaut scientist candidacy training at the IIAS in Washington, D.C. An analog astronaut is someone who simulates a space mission on Earth to help prepare for future crewed space exploration. The pilot and cyber engineer joined the all-female crew of the Analog Expedition 92, proudly wearing the Fijian flag on her uniform. Alicia Foon spoke with Niharika Gambia about the steps she's taken to make her dream a reality of one day working in space as a commercial astronaut.
As a child, I used to read a lot of space books, and my grandfather kind of used to bring me like different space books that would just like lie around the house. And also we used to go to, there's a very popular shopping center in Fiji. It's called MHCC, and I used to like save my lunch money and like buy books after school when he would pick me up. And then I think that's where my interest for space and science kind of started. The very first time I flew on a plane, my first flight, I think I was going to Melbourne from Nandi, and I was a 6 or 5-year-old girl, and I sat in the plane, and you know, like when it takes off, I just really enjoyed that feeling, and I was like, yeah, I want to do something in the skies.
How did you go about the study process and the training to become Fiji's first analog astronaut?
So when I got here, I pretty much started out first of all in cybersecurity. before all of that, I was working 3 jobs. I was a cashier, and I was a waitress, and I did all these jobs so that I could save enough money to be able to start going to this boot camp, that actually taught me how to do my cybersecurity job and, gain my certifications and get qualified. And then I landed my first job as a cyber engineer. And then from that point, I used the money that I started making, which was a lot better, to be able to fund my education, get into college, and start my computer science degree with WGU. At first, I was going to a community college, but then I transferred all those credits over to WGU. And then I also, I used that money to also fund my schooling for my pilot lessons, flying. And then from that point on, I made connections and I learned about warbirds and I learned about the Commemorative Air Force. And that's where I started volunteering with them also. I started doing a lot of different things and getting my knowledge and contacts from a lot of different places. And then I stumbled across the NASA space program, which is like a program for non-citizens of the US. And you can kind of like join them and do like a fellowship program through them and learn and kind of like work on a project with a team, the diverse team members that they put you together. You write proposals, you solve pain points of NASA, and if they really enjoy your work, then sometimes they will actually fund you money to go on with your project and develop it further. And then from that point, I applied for the IIAS, which is the International Institute of Astronautical Sciences program, and I started off with flight test engineering program of theirs. And then I applied for the analog astronaut program and I got in, and then that's where I'm at now. So that's been like my 4 to 5 year journey so far into getting to where I am.
That's amazing. And how does it feel being up in the air when you are flying planes in World War II aircrafts, I understand?
It just feels amazing. It feels very liberating to be in the skies. And I feel like when I am flying up there, I do not think about anything else. I am always present in the moment and just enjoying things. And I feel like it's a really good skill for someone to develop if they just want to be present in the moment. If it's something that they want to do as a hobby, also you can absolutely do it. And if it's something profession-wise, then I feel like it's a very rewarding passion and profession.
Being the Fijian's first analog astronaut, were you surprised by the reaction from the Prime Minister, from the country and local media as well? What was that like, kind of waking up to seeing, oh wow, okay, people are really backing me?
Yeah, that was very, I just can't put in words how, I think I was like very emotional when I saw that, and when I still see it, it was literally, I went to bed after I updated my profile picture, and then I wake up and then I see this reaction. It was literally that. So I was like very emotional and very happy, and yeah, I'm still at a loss of words for it.
It is so inspiring. And I guess if there are more young people, I'm sure, that are watching your journey, what advice would you give them to kind of encourage them in this direction if that's something that they'd also like to do since you're pioneering this?
I would tell them that when you get those random ideas and those random things that that just come out of the blue, or that burning urge to do something, and then sometimes life comes at you and then you're kind of like doubting yourself and being like, oh, I don't think I should do that, it's maybe too much for me. But I would just tell them that it's never too much for you, and you should absolutely go for your dreams. And also, while you do that, make sure that you are grabbing every opportunity, even if it doesn't seem like it's even if it doesn't seem like you should be doing this, but just do it. Like, just go for knowledge everywhere and anywhere and any place you can grab it.
The New Caledonian national men's football team are 2 games away from potentially qualifying for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Playing for their families and the French territory has never been more relevant than now, with the political turmoil at home. Elias Satora reports.
New Caledonia are through to the semi-finals of the OFC qualifiers for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, topping Group A, 2 points clear of fellow semi-finalist Fiji, with whom they drew 1-1 in Port Moresby on Sunday. Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands are out of contention, but played out the final pool match, with the latter triumphing 2-1 to stay off the bottom of the table. New Caledonia midfielder Abieza Gino was emotional in commenting on their progression, saying they played for their families and their country.
I give all the praise to the glory to my Lord and my Savior, Jesus Christ. We play with our heart, play with values, and this victory, this place of the top of the group, it's for the people in New Caledonia. It's for our family. You know, the situation is not easy about 6 months ago, but it's for all the family.
Gino says they are satisfied they have achieved their goal, which was to qualify for the semi-finals.
We are happy. Now the job is done. Now we take 1-1 against Fiji. It's a very good game, difficult game because it's too hot, but you know, the job is done. One place top of the group, and I'll see you next time to New Zealand.
Fijian defender Scott Wara says they were disappointed they did not win their game, having scored first to lead New Caledonia 1-0 in their final game, but they are happy to have also qualified.
Bit of a bittersweet feeling, to be honest. I think the boys thought we deserved 3 points, and fortunately we gave away a pretty cheap goal, something that we've trained for as well, which makes it hurt even more. But at the same time, yeah, kind of glad we made it through. It was a tough game, and I think the boys we don't really know how to feel about it. We're a bit both sides at the moment.
Solomon Islands player Philip Mango thanked their fans for supporting them as they ended their disappointing campaign on high with a 2-1 victory over host Papua New Guinea.
Oh yeah, everyone was happy, especially to win a game today. We haven't made it to a second round, but win today, at least we get a result today that everyone's been working hard throughout the campaign, so at least we get a victory today. I want to thank the supporters who came in to take their time and come and support us. The boys really appreciated their support.
Host Papua New Guinea, playing at home for the first time in 7 years, finished at the bottom of the table with a draw and 2 losses from their 3 matches. Captain Tommy Semi apologized to fans for not giving them cause for celebration.
It was pretty special for everyone in a group as a collective. Unlucky today that we didn't come up with a result. Always a privilege and a joy to play in front of your own fans and your family. And you know, it's been a while after the Nations Cup back in 2017. But yeah, it's always pretty special to put a jersey and fight for your pride and for everyone.
New Caledonia and Fiji now return home to prepare for the semi-finals, which will be played in New Zealand in March 2025. The hosts, meanwhile, are well clear at the top of Group B and were yet to play their dead rubber match against Samoa in Auckland when this program was recorded. The final semi-final spot was also yet to be decided in the match between Vanuatu and Tahiti at Go Media Stadium, with the Tahitians only needing a draw to go through.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tōwha Soifua.